Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Immigration Talk Show. I'm Napasa, and I'm going to be your host for this session that's lined up. And before we head on with today's amazing webinar, I have this important disclaimer, and that is by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. And friends, like I said, today we have another very amazing session lined up, and we are going to speak about, everything that's making a buzz right now, especially with regard to student visas here in the US. And to help us, dive deeper into this topic today, we are going to be joined by attorney Isadora Velasquez, and we're going to be speaking about what's changing here with the student visas and how could it affect the foreign students. And by the way, our guest is from ISA Law, yes, based out of Miami, United States. So yes, if you talk about ISA Law, they combine expertise in business and family immigration law. And we are going to be very, very excited today because we have Isadora Velasquez joining us all the way from Miami. Hi, Isa, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you again. Very happy to be here because this topic is hot and changing every day. So I'm glad to discuss it.
Yes, so true. Every day is so interesting, especially when you talk about US immigration law, right? So
Correct.
you have been busy, I'm sure. Tell us about it. What's going on with ISA law?
Well, we do a lot of detention work. So for better or worse, we have been very busy. We do a lot of court cases. So we are here in Miami and all over the United States. So yeah, it's been a very busy couple of days, but very fulfilling because we have been able to maneuver many changes. So I'm hoping I can explain all of them to you guys and your audience so that we can be ready for things that may be coming our way and we're not caught off guard when they show up because there will be new changes, not only from a local level, but also from the Supreme Court and especially for students. So it's good to be prepared for what may happen soon.
So true, so true. And thank you so much today for making time to be here. And I'm very excited because we have some very amazing questions from my end. And I'm sure that folks out there, who are also watching us from different corners of the world are going to be happy to join us with their questions as well. And let me tell you, folks, that you can comment wherever you're watching. We are live right now on YouTube, but you can also check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, on Instagram as well. And please feel free to drop in your questions. We are going to take them a little later in this webinar that's happening today with none other than Isadora, attorney Isadora from ISA Law. So check us out. And another very exciting thing is that you can join us on call. And the number is displayed above on the screen. The number is 425-436-6335, and the access code is 988-888. So feel free to join us. And Isa, I'm excited. So I think without further ado, let's just go into the questions if that's all right with you.
Of course.
All right. So I've got this first question that's coming up, and that is, was the US State Department's global pause on student visa interviews something that you anticipated, or does it feel like a sudden move?
Well, it felt a little bit sudden, I think, for all of us. And the reason was because we were actually caught off guard when we started seeing the detention of residents for voicing their opinions. We know that anyone who is not a citizen could have been detained, and the privilege of being in the U.S. can always be taken away. But doing so for specifically having a different opinion than the government is something that we had not seen at such a high level before. So the pausing of specifically the student visas for the particular reasons that the government was advocating definitely caught us off guard. At the same time, we was something that we thought was going to be redirected only to a specific organization, in this particular case to Harvard University. And we found it interesting when the government decided to pause it for all institutions altogether. Interestingly, though, the fact that it was originally directed solely to Harvard has been the green light because the deep lawsuits that originally started with Harvard have now opened the door for us to assume that these visas will soon resume, meaning Harvard has been very successful, and as soon as yesterday, the Department of State has announced that they will be resuming the visas for Harvard in particular. So that leads us to believe that visas for all students will soon be resuming this very soon. So I'm hoping that this is only temporary. So the same way we were caught off guard, thinking this was only going to be for one institution, and it ended up being for everyone. Now this one institution will hopefully open the doors for all of us to start seeing these student visas up again. So don't despair. I really am hopeful that the Department of State will soon give new directives on student visas to start interviewing again.
Absolutely. Even I feel so also, because even recently, we had a couple of hundred, people, students who had their visas revocated, but then, they were all active again. So I'm so excited. I mean, so happy that that happened for them. And I really hope that it works the same way even for the others as well. So,
Yeah, it just emphasized how we must be on the constant lookout for the news. I know that, especially as students, we are busy studying, of course, that's why we came here. But now, with immigration in particular, when we have this temporary status, we have to constantly pay attention to the news, because what we've seen is, of course, the student visa for new visas in particular were affected, they were put on pause. But now we have the added layer of a travel ban. So although we expect that we will see new student visas come up and that we will see the interviews come up thanks to the lawsuits from Harvard and the Department of State, please remain cautious for the 12 countries that are now part of the travel ban, because that has now come to effect. And unless there's new litigation in particular from those 12 countries, we have to remain in on the lookout for the news to see if those particular countries will have the student visas. For so far, the answer is no for those 12 countries in particular.
right. Thank you so much, Isadora, for that, helpful explanation, I would say. And I would like to also greet our folks who have joined us. Ricky, hi, Ricky. Thank you so much for joining us here on YouTube. He says hello, by the way. And stay with us. We are going to take up your comments and questions in a little while. So be with us, Ricky. And also, Isa, the pause, which is being linked to the national security and enhanced social media screening. I mean, nobody thought that social media would be screened at this level. I mean, we've been in social media for, more than a decade or 2 decades, and it's been very, very involving, I would say, and didn't know that it's going to turn up against us someday like this. But how should we understand this shift from an immigration law perspective?
Well, if you didn't think it was going to be this screened this heavily, obviously it goes back to my point before on how we need to pay attention to the news, because this is not a surprise for anyone who's been looking at the news. And so, it's not just for the immigrant community. U.S. citizens are now seeing the very intense scrutiny of social media, particularly at the airport, to the point that when we come in as U.S. citizens, we have to relinquish our electronics. We are now being advised that when we travel to do so with our electronics in airplane mode, because technically even us as US citizens have to, when we're questioned by agents, unless we have specific entries such as global entry, we could be questioned by agents, and we don't even have the luxury of letting them or simply rejecting the answering of questions when it comes to social media, or not giving them our appliances or electronic devices or phones or cell phones or even our computers. So having them in airplane mode is the only way to avoid answering these questions when it comes to social media. I give the advice of putting them in airplane mode, but that won't help the immigrant who's seeking a visa, because, of course, they will scrutinize very heavily your social media handles, what you have posted, and what you may have deleted. And that's only going to continue, because imagine if you're doing so very heavily for US citizens when you're coming in through the airport, they're going to do so even more to anyone seeking a visa, not just student visas, any visa at all, including tourist visas that we've seen maybe in some countries in particular may be easier to get. Now social media is highly scrutinized. Also remember what's going on inside the US, the whole internal turmoil, the division. So, and even division inside our own government and sadly politics that has seeped into how visas are being processed. Sadly, the advice that we immigration attorneys are now giving our clients is that although freedom of speech is basically how the U.S. has been built when it comes to acquire immigration benefits, it has to be limited. If you wish to seek any visa, from tourist visa to student visa, even work visas, freedom of speech is something that sadly will be used against you. And that is something that is in the discretion of the Department of State when processing any visas. So you must be very careful with what you may have posted, even if it's your own country's internal turmoil. Understand that the government, in their own discretion, I mean here the U.S. government, may review it and even hold it against you. So we have been at least I have been instructing my clients to be very cautious with what they post, even if their web pages are private. Because understand that your page might be private and you may have a friend whose page is not, and they decide to share something, the government may have access to it. We have lately seen some interviews, although attorneys don't accompany their clients to interviews at the consulate level, they do accompany their clients here inside the US at their interview. And we have seen the government show pictures of what they may have posted in their social media, even when their pages are private. So you may think, oh, my page is private, they won't have access to it, and you will be surprised what the federal government can find. So although I encourage people to be vocal and protest if they want to, be careful if you're looking for a visa and try to balance out what's more important, what's your need. If your need is to come and work in the US or come and study in the US, or to voice your opinion, understanding that sadly, under this political climate, it will be used against you. That's just the way things are being processed right now. There is very active litigation, both in the deportation level, that is very notorious. You may see it in the news. There are people who are right now undergoing deportation removal proceedings who are residents right now facing possible deportation consequences solely for both voicing their opinions, not just in social media, but also in protest. And that's being used against people seeking visas. So it's only going to continue until litigation has some impact on how we regulate social media. Because it's in the beginning stages, as Nifasa just mentioned, we have to be very careful. So if you're seeking a visa, my advice, like I said to all my clients, is balance it out. And if you can be quiet, that is sadly the best way to go at this moment. Because if you want the visa, anything you post can and will be used against you.
Well, that leads me to my next question. I mean, what about, free speech and fair immigration policy, stuff like that? I mean, if you look at Secretary Rubio, who hinted, there's that potential visa denials, tied to activism and public criticism. So, how does that sit with US principles of free speech and even fair immigration policy?
So that's the balancing act. So what we've done is I admit I have some clients who understand that because of their jobs, their studies, they have chosen to delete their pages and they have simply chosen to take, we may say, the easier route and simply keep their visas and not risk it. Others, I admit, I have some very brave clients who have chosen to fight their deportation and they understand that they may be facing originally in the introduction, Ipasa briefly mentioned some visa revocations that we saw, student visas in particular. Some of them were revoked for very trivial reasons, arrests that were dismissed. Some of them were revoked for very serious reasons, maybe posts that didn't disagree with our government's current values. And we went to court and we sued. Interestingly, the government reinstated these visas, so the lawsuit later became moot, but those people were doing it to state, basically for the same reasons, to send a message, the importance and the value of the free speech or the U.S. First Amendment that is so strong. And in a way, some people will argue that made this country what it is today. So it's more of a balancing act. I admit I have some clients who are a bit hungry to express their opinions and they want to go to court and they're not afraid to fight it. Others are a bit more hesitant because they understand they have a job and schooling and they don't want to risk the visa. That's why it's more of a balancing act of each person's values. Also, I must, I'm not going to minimize that it's not cheap to go to court here. The United States is a very litigious country, but at the same time, it's not a country in which going to court is cost effective. It can be very expensive to have attorneys, and the government is aware of this. That's why they know that going to court, face deportations, they don't give you an attorney. It's not like criminal court where you have an attorney assigned to you to represent you. Because they know that, they also understand that people who may be detained can afford an attorney. So I mean, immigration attorneys have been trying to pair up with nonprofits, but we're also a bit overwhelmed at this point. There's many detentions going on. So it's a, once again, balancing act of each person's values, what they can contribute, and what they're willing to endure. Is your boss willing to put up with you missing some time of work because you may be having issues with your visa? Is your school right now? Most schools are in summer break, so it is maybe a good time to be facing litigation. So it is the balancing act of what we can face and what we can afford, and where can we find people to represent us. But there are some organizations, depending on the state, who are fighting back. Right now, if anyone's following the news, LA is very notorious for being very active and vocal, and that is one of the issues they're fighting, the lack of freedom of speech for people who may be seeking visas to come to the US and don't have access anymore to that social media aspect that has been so essential in a way to communicate. So hopefully people will keep fighting, but as a balancing act, if you want to come to the US, my advice still remains: be careful what you post because it will be used against you.
Exactly. And that brings me this funny thought that, we used to have notebooks. So I'd say maybe start writing them on your notebooks rather than just posting them on social media, or maybe tell it to your best friend, but not on social media. Right, Isa?
Yes, and don't send it on a text message because remember, they may take your phone and read that message. And if you have that notebook with you, maybe put it in your suitcase or don't carry it in your carry on because they may go through your bag.
There you go. Thank you so much, Isadora, for that. And yes, I do have more questions, but I think we should take a couple of them from our audience as well, not keep them waiting too much.
No
So,
problem.
folks out there, I hope you are, enjoying this session and you're resonating with this discussion. So please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show, and check us out. We are on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and also on Instagram. And of course, if you have or you want to contact attorney Isadora Velasquez, for a one-on-one consultation, please visit this link, which is displayed on the screen. Now let's take up Ricky's question. My NIW I-140 petition was filed by employer. NIW I-140 petition processing time for the Nebraska Center is 16.5 months as per USCIS website. Can you give some idea on the typical processing time that you are seeing for the I-140 petition? Also,
Ricky,
can premium processing increase chances of RFE for NIW I-140 approval?
Ricky, if you look on the website, and first of all, thank you. I saw that you were here very early, so I highly appreciate it. But if you look on the website in the top corner, it will say that this is the processing time for 80% of cases. And what we've noticed is they're fairly accurate. So on average, it's around 15 months. 16 tends to be on the high end, but yeah, around 15 months. As to the premium processing, personally, I am a fan of premium processing. Not all my colleagues agree. I have actually seen the opposite. If you do a really good job and you pay for premium processing, not only do you get a quick answer, so you have that weight off your shoulder because in less than a month, 15 days, if you have the need for an RFE, the reality is that I always warn my clients, most of the time you may get an RFE because they want to buy the time to get additional 87 days to give you a response. But in reality, who cares? If your case is good enough and you know you have the information, you know you have the evidence, you're still going to shorten your time significantly from 15 months to 87 months. Because once you send the evidence in response to the RFE, they will have they have to respond again in 15 days. So I encourage premium processing. I know it's pricey, but I think it's a good idea. I think it's worth it. I also personally think it increases your chances of an approval. I think immigration has seen they take you seriously when you're willing to invest in premium processing. So it may increase the chances of an RFE because the government wants to buy time to process your case, but I still think it's worth it. So that would be my advice if you're willing to do it. Then again, if you're in that category in which you're not going to get it right away and you're not in a hurry, you may want to save that money. So it's balancing on getting the response right away and getting the weight off your shoulder, or how costly it could be.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Isadora, for that, helpful explanation, and I'm sure that it will be very, very, very helpful for Ricky. So all the best, Ricky. And now let's go on to Minakshi Sood's question. As a foreign student, I'm concerned about my visa status. Could these changes affect my ability to stay in the US if I already have a student visa, or will they only apply to new applicants?
Great question. So there's two changes to keep in mind. One has to do with people who are applying for a new student visa. Those are the people who are seeing that they're not getting appointments. So if you already have your student visa, congratulations. You don't have to worry about having to get that appointment, which is so difficult, almost impossible to find at this point. The other big change is the travel ban. If you already have your student visa and you're out of the country, come back quickly. Understand that there's a list of 12 countries that are part of the travel ban. They gave us a very small cushion to come back. And the reason is because if you are part of this list and you're not back, you're not going to be allowed in, even if you have a visa. So to answer your question, the travel ban does affect people who already have visas available. Even if you have a student visa, if you leave your country, you will not be allowed in. So keep that in mind, that changes affect individuals who have visas. Travel bans affect individuals who have visas, basically making these visas void if you decide to leave. So the visas remain valid if you're in the US, but they will not allow you back in if you choose to leave. That's the big distinction. Now, if you already have a visa, you don't have to worry about an interview. That's where you don't, the student visa becomes a great asset. So you don't have to worry about that interview that no one can find out, and hopefully you will be able to get them soon again.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much, Isadora, for taking up this question for Minakshi. Now let's take up Imran's question as well. And hi, Robinson, thank you for joining us. Imran, thank you as well for joining us, and let us take your question. I've been considering going for a part time job during my studies, but with the visa changes, I'm worried that it might cause problems with my status. So, are there specific rules I need to follow for an on campus and off campus employment now?
So far, there haven't been any changes as to on or off campus jobs that will affect your visa, but the main rules are that you need to ask your school for permission. For example, Venezuela is a particular country that, based on a memorandum, they are allowed to work. But to do so, to get that particular work permit, they are encouraged to go to their school, the school that issued their student visas, and let them know that they need employment. The memorandum, and for Venezuela in particular, points out that the country is in dire need, and because of the need, the U.S. government assumes that everyone who has a student visa from Venezuela also has a need to work. So if you are somebody who needs to work, it is advised, and this is for anyone who has a student visa, to go to your school, to the admissions department, let them know that you need to work. They'll evaluate your circumstances. This is called work study. It is allowed under the student visa. Once again, it has not been announced that this will change, if there are any circumstances. Just let them know you need to work, and they will work with you. Most of the cases, they allow for work study inside on campus. I encourage it. If you need it, go get it. Once again, no announcements that it will affect in the future. But as I mentioned before at the beginning of the show, right now, although we might be busy working and studying, it is important to follow immigration news, because no announcements that this will change, but we never know. So it's important to follow if this may change in the future. But if you need to work, go to your admissions department, let them know, and they'll work with you to see if they can offer most likely employment inside on campus and on the campus. And if not available, they'll look for something, at least help you or assist in trying to see if you have something off campus that may even be related to the field that you're studying. So it's good to ask your school first. That's the first step, and it's essential.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm sure that that'll be very helpful for Imran. Thank you, Isadora, once again. And friends out there, to keep yourself updated, since it's very important, especially that, every day there is a new update with regard to US immigration policies. So do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. We do come up with, the latest updates as soon as we have them. And of course, if you want to have a one on one consultation, or maybe get some help with your visa process, do contact attorney Isadora Valquez and visit this link which is displayed on the screen. So thank you again. Now let's go on to Robinson's question. He's saying, I'm a foreign student currently pursuing a master's degree in the US and F-1 visa. The new rule proposes to limit the duration of stay for F-1 visas to a fixed period of 2 or 4 years, depending on the country of origin. How would this change, affect my ability to complete my degree, and what steps can I take to ensure I can remain in the US to finish my studies?
So I'll tell you how we've been addressing this. The U.S. Is notorious for having students who are actually full-time students and are whose career, whose job is to be a student, meaning that they're master students who take much longer than 2 years to graduate. We have applied for these students to extend their visas locally. It will be an extension of your status. So that would be how I would answer your question. How would you change your ability? Instead of having the typical maybe leave and to go through consular process or having to renew your visa, the same way you have maybe applied to extend your visa before inside the US, that's how you would apply to extend your visa inside. I know it may sound contradictory, they're limiting your F1, but if you're able to show that your master's degree is not done, there's they have been allowing your extension, just showing how many credits you have left. Interestingly, I don't know if many of you recall, I assume you're all rather young, the student visa typically used to be a visa that had an I attached to it, an I to mean indefinite, meaning you would renew it until you were done with studies. These new regulations that limit the time, we attorneys have been able to fight against them using their own American techniques, meaning how long Americans may take to finish degrees. Most Americans don't take 2 years to finish master's degrees. So that would be your reasoning to either extend your visa if you are not done with your master's degree. So you can apply, like I said, to the form is the I-539. You can file it inside the US through your school, obviously, to get a new form I-20 to show how many credits you have pending to extend. You could do consular process, but personally, I would encourage you to do an extension of your status. We've noticed that has been easier because through consular process, because of the rule, in consular process, they tend to be a bit more, we will call it stickler for the rules. So it's easier to do the extension of your status. USCIS, the administrative department here in the United States, is more understanding of the American way of taking a little bit longer than 2 years to finish your master's degree.
That is very interesting. So, I mean, plus different countries have different timelines, right? I mean,
Correct, correct. Americans like to study for a long time, I guess.
well, how, I mean, I may ask, with visa law, how many student visas you're dealing with right now, visa?
Well, I'm going to tell you a little secret with visa law. When it comes to student visas, especially encourage our students to go directly to the school and to process the visa with the school. We only process the visas with the students if the schools are having issues for whatever reason. For example, when few months ago they were having issues with their revocations, that's when we got really hands on and fought for our students. But otherwise, because the schools have to work so closely with the students, we tell our students, go with the school, save that money, and use us when you really need us.
Okay. That's interesting to know. And thank you again. Ricky, thank you for your questions. Please stay with us. We will take them up very, very soon. But now let's move on with some of my questions as well. And I wanted to ask you, what's the immediate impact of this policy on Indian students who are aiming for fall 2025 intake? The denials or the free speech and fair immigration policy we spoke about some time back.
I'm sorry, I got this. I was reading Ricky's question and I got distracted. You mean the with the impact that we've seen? Oh, well, the impact that we've seen in the schools, and I know because the same way I encouraged my students to apply to the schools is because I work closely with the schools to make sure that they apply correctly. And what we've seen is schools very concerned about not only the lack of diversity, which was already a problem at the beginning of the administration because they were pushing against um, getting rid of some diversity policies that the prior administration had implemented. But now it's even worse because the schools are actually actively not receiving the visas that they expected from other countries. So they're seeing a lack of diversity in the schools. As Nipasa mentioned in the beginning, introducing me, I am located in Miami, which, as you can imagine, is a very diverse area. But my law school is located in Pennsylvania, not a very diverse area, particularly Carlisle, Pennsylvania. My law school has severely complained that they relied on student visas to meet their quota of what they understand as a diverse school, and they haven't been able to meet it. So that has been the impact, at least in the schools, of not having the visas processed. In addition, right now we're in the summer break. Schools rely on income from international students, and they don't know if they're going to have that income starting August when the schools start. So they are worried about, for example, a notorious school, well, not notorious in a negative way, but a fairly large and famous school here in Miami, Florida International University, the name says it. They are concerned about not having those international students that make their school so famous beginning August, because many of the visas for the freshman year have not been processed, and they don't know if they will be processed in time. The Harvard list for Harvard in particular was announced yesterday, June 9th. June 9th, and yesterday was June 10th. We don't know if the visas that are processed just for Harvard, if it's going to be enough time for schools like Florida International University to meet their quota just to fill their freshman class. So University of Miami, Florida International University are worried, yet we attorneys worried that the only school that has been fairly vocal about not meeting the quota of just enough students has been Harvard. We know the schools don't have enough international students lined up because there are simply no visas being issued, but no one is speaking up in terms of lawsuits besides Harvard. Possibly because they're afraid of losing funding from the government. The government has taken away $2.6 billion from Harvard just because of this issue. So maybe that's why schools haven't spoken up, but at the same time, they are losing a lot of money by not having the students lined up. So I think once they do the final numbers and they see how much money they're losing by not having international students and how much money would they lose if they make the government angry, we may see more lawsuits. And that's when we'll really know the answer to your question as to how are students being affected and how are the schools truly being affected. But right now, we're a bit in the dark.
Oh, goodness me, those are huge numbers. And even if we look at, yeah, the students' perspective, they are afraid that they'll be having gap years or gap months. And, fall 2025 is very, very soon. And they're even worried about spring 2026. So, what about that?
Well, the schools are worried about lawsuits to them because many students have already paid for the
Right.
semester ahead. So they're worried that if the students can't get the visas that they were promised, because like I said, when you had asked me how many visas are firm process, I warn you that we send our students directly to the schools to process their visas. So these students already paid the school the tuition, they paid the room and board, and now they're being warned they might not get their visas. They're definitely going to be suing some schools. Schools like the University of Miami cost $40,000. So these are going to be many lawsuits that the schools may be facing, and we wonder who are they going to sue back? If it's going to be the federal government, or are they going to be rush jobs to get the visas going once the appointment starts? Because attorneys like myself, tourist visas are taking a year to process. So attorneys like myself were encouraging people to get student visas if they wanted to come to the U.S. quicker, and now that plan may backfire. So it's going to be interesting couple of months.
Yes, every day is interesting, especially with US immigration. So, friends, do not forget to subscribe because we come up with the latest updates that you don't want to miss out on. So, ring that bell and subscribe to our channel at Immigration Talk Show. And also, friends, I'm sure that if you are navigating a US visa, you may need some help and you may need consultation. So, why not go visit attorney Isadora Velasquez and check her information in the link which is displayed on the screen. So thank you again, Isadora. I'm having a great time. I hope you are as well. Are you ready for more
True.
questions?
I enjoy it always. Of course.
Okay,
Of
so
course.
are there any proactive steps that universities or students can take, to minimize this disruption caused by these delays?
Yes. So the proactive step, one of them we hinted to before, when we were talking about people who already had the student visa and if it would affect them. One of them is people who have tourist visas, and they said, okay, I was waiting for my student visa. Now this appointment is gone. What should I do? If you have any other visa to come to the US, we've been encouraging our clients to come here using that visa. If you have a tourist visa, which is the most common one, use it to enter the US. I must distinguish a tourist visa from ESTA, or what we also call visa waiver. Those visas are typically tied to European countries, and that's because a tourist visa, I can apply for a change of status. I can change your status from a tourist visa to a student visa while you're already in the US. So if there's no appointments in the consular process, you can still come to the US with your tourist visa, and I can change your status to a student and you can go to school. Or if you come under your H4 category for your parents' visa or whatever, another visa, I can change your category. But if you come under ESTA, or what, as I mentioned, the visa waiver, that is the one of the few visa categories that cannot be changed. You cannot change your status from that to a student visa. So before you enter, make sure you speak with an attorney and find out if your visa status can be changed. But explore that. If you have a visa, try to come to the US and we'll change your status to a student visa so you can study. So if you can't find an appointment abroad, we can change your status here in the US while you're already here.
There you go. Thank you so much, Isadora, for taking that up as well. And now I have another question, and that is, for students who have already paid tuition or, secured their housing, what is the option that, they have if their visa plans are now very uncertain?
So when NIPA sent me this question, I actually reached out to the schools that I work with and I asked them, what are you guys doing? And that's how I found out that many of them are worried about lawsuits that may come up. They had mentioned that some students have actually started in the process of suing them if they're not offering refunds. Some of these schools have already started giving them contingency plans, such as potential refunds if they're not able to make it but in time when the school starts. They do hope that during the summer break they will resume with these interviews and people will be able to make it in time for when the school resumes. The third option that the schools have mentioned they will be offering is putting your position on hold so that if you're not able to start for this semester, which will begin in August, September, maybe you can start by the next for spring. So it's advisable that if you've already put your deposit, contact the school. And of course, if the school is unreasonable, I emphasized before, the U.S. is very litigious. This is the type of lawsuit that because private schools in particular, which are the ones that tend to issue these visas, are pricey, attorneys are working on what they call a contingency fee, meaning that they are not charging hourly, and hourly fees can be very pricey. So if your school is being unreasonable and not working with you, not trying to give your money back or hold your spot, be aware that there are attorneys that are definitely willing to work with you to take action with the school. But most schools, I've noticed from my research and preparing for this today, are definitely willing to work with you because they understand it's the Department of State not cooperating with this. And that's why I think this is very going to be very short-lived. The same way the revocation of the student visas at the moment was short-lived because the schools did speak up. They were not suing as much as we would have liked, but they were privately putting some pressure in the government, letting them know we're losing money and affecting our economy. So hold tight. I think this is going to be brief, but I'll keep you guys posted as to what may happen. But contact your school right now to make sure you're protected.
It's very important to stay in touch with your school, the DSO, and especially because you're an immigrant here, and to be informed is your power. So, friends, do not miss out on any information, and make sure that you have subscribed to the news that bring you the latest updates, and of course to our channel as well, because we bring the latest updates on US immigration as well. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. Do not forget to subscribe and ring that bell. So, Isa, we should take up some more questions, and we do have from Ricky now. Ricky, let's take up. He says thanks already, by the way. And our WhatsApp calls also subject to social media scrutiny during visa appointments and USCIS petitions reviews. And our WhatsApp conversations or calls also subject to social media scrutiny for visas and petition. Well, I am one of the core members of the startup helping technically was as well as in raising funds and bringing in new projects. Can you suggest ways to use this to build profile for EB1 petition? Ricky has a lot to say first off, but yeah, never go ahead.
I like your project, Ricky. So first, WhatsApp. Yes, definitely they can be used. Now, calls are difficult because you're calling and it's supposed to be encrypted, so they're not supposed to know. But if you're calling somebody who they can see is somebody they might not like, yeah, they will know. WhatsApp is a tool they can use against you. So my advice is when it comes to going to the interview, delete WhatsApp. Don't have it. Same thing coming to the airport. Don't have it available. Have it on airplane. The truth is, the government knows that you may have WhatsApp. I am one that I am not a fan of WhatsApp, but that's because I am Hispanic, as you may be able to tell. And in the Hispanic community, we love WhatsApp and we abuse it. So my friends use it so much that I just delete it because it's used way too much. So maybe you can get away with that excuse that I just don't use it because it's too annoying and I like to be unplugged. But if not, be aware that they might find it a bit suspicious if you don't have it. But they can go through it. They can use it against you. So just be careful. I'm not saying delete every message. WhatsApp is a little bit easier to control than other media like Facebook or Instagram, in which we think we delete things and they show up in the future. WhatsApp is, when they say it's encrypted, it's encrypted. That's why we see a lot of criticism on the government not being able to access it. So you do have a little bit more privacy when it comes to WhatsApp, but just make sure whatever you don't want them to see, it's not there to be seen. But yes, it could be technically used against you. As to my tips for EB1, the my biggest tip when it comes to how to build it up to be successful is if you're gonna go the EB1 route, EB1 is for the big boss. So be the big boss. You can't be hands on as much as you would like to be to really go the EB1 route. If you're gonna be one hands on, you may want to consider EB2, which is more of um, artists. Or, I mean, if you're EB1, maybe work on your talent or emphasize how many awards you have won. EB2 is more national interest or more of a petition. So, but EB1 is either be back off and let the firm run itself, the startup run itself. But if you're a core member and you're very hands-on, they might say you're more of an employee. If you're a core member and you're hands-on, focus more on how many awards have you won, how many awards has the company won, how many of them are tied to you, how much money do you make. Either become a very special, above and beyond individual, or become very hands-off big boss so that they say he is the CEO. CEOs don't answer the phone, they don't meet with clients, they delegate. Or if you're extraordinary talent, you are extraordinary talent. You're the GOAT. You're messy. You win everything. So that balancing is very important for the EB1 category. Otherwise, you may want to consider other categories. But for raising funds, it's very important to see how big the project is and how much you can bring to it without being too hands-on, depending on what you're doing. I know it's a very complicated explanation, but it's really the best I'm trying to help you. It's a easy one is complicated. Make sure you have an attorney guiding your
Yes,
hand.
I think yes. I
Please.
would always suggest that, no matter what visa you are dealing with or are, the process that you are going through, it's always best, to get some important advice from the experts out there who are immigration attorneys like you. And friends, if you need a consultation or some advice, do not forget to also visit this link which is displayed on the screen and scrolling below, and go visit yes, this link to get to know more about ESA law and attorney Isadora Velasquez. So we do have more questions, Isa, and I think we should just take them up. So control, let's go. Yes, with this first one is from John Wick. Can anyone help me with a situation? I have submitted my DS 160 in 16th of April and paid for my MVR fee and booked appointment on 2nd May. Today I noticed that I submitted the DS in different country. US Embassy portal. What should I do now? Can anyone help me with this? It's very urgent.
Email them. There should be an email, and if not, you need to contact an attorney because we do have an email. And that's how you let them know I submitted this in the wrong portal, and they'll fix it for you. As an attorney, we have access to an email that we use to fix mistakes. Of course, we're all human. If you don't have an attorney, now is the time in which you hire an attorney. But email is the way to fix mistakes like this. You basically email them and let them know this mistake happened, and they will fix it for you. But that is at least the way we handle these things, which happen to us all the time in our office. You must email them, contact them right away, let them know, because you're right, it is very urgent. Email them.
Thank you, Isa, for taking that up. This is John. I hope that you are resonating with all these answers and discussion we are having today. And folks out there, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show, and also ring that bell so that whenever we have discussions like these, you're notified and you can join us with your questions. And Ricky, since you have been commenting, I would just say, folks out there, we also have a number for you to dial in. So why not just call us on this number? The number is 425-436-6335, and the access code is 988888. Join us. So this next question now is from an anonymous member, and saying, "Hi, did anyone change their visa from F2 to F1 without leaving USA? And how much time is it taking nowadays?"
Yes, yes, you can change from F2 to F1. As to how much time, go to your school, because it will really depend on when your school starts. For example, here in Miami, we have language schools that work by trimester instead of by the semester, and they may be starting in a couple of weeks because they may be summer schools. So when they are working with you, they may be able to change your status from F2 to F1 within a couple of weeks, because they need you to start fairly soon in July instead of waiting until August. So find a school that is suitable for you, and that way you can apply for your change of status. That's the form. That's exactly what you're applying for. So yes, you can change your visa from F2 to F1 without leaving the U.S. I highly encourage it. Right now, it is being done right now. It's not being done at the moment are the actual consular processing, the appointments at the consulate level. Do so and find the school to understand how much time it may take, because that will vary depending on the school that you choose. Because like I said, the school is the backbone. They need the I-20. They need all those CVIS forms that they have to process for you. Without the school, you can't get it done. The school will determine how much time it will take.
That's interesting. And thank you so much for the detailed explanation, Attorney Isadora. So now let's go on to this next one. This is from another anonymous member asking, "On submitting my DS 160, I got following message. An unexpected error has occurred while processing your previous request. The error has been reported to the site administrator. No further action is required. To retrieve your DS 160 application, please enter your application ID." Has anyone encountered something like this? If so, how did it get resolved? Do you know anything about this?
It's normal. It happens. The system falls regularly. Of course, we attorneys know, because we like to submit applications late at night, at midnight, when systems crash. It's normal. As long as you can access the DS-160 application, which I encourage you to, because it's always good to always have applications that you submit to make sure all applications you always submit to the government remain the same with the same consistent information. Make sure you have it. So as long as you can access, it was properly submitted, you should be okay. There's nothing to resolve, as the system said, because it was properly submitted. They're just simply letting you know that maybe it was not sent immediately because they were doing some maintenance or whatever it may be. That's why it was an error message. But the application was properly sent as long as you can access it. That's how you resolve it. If you can access it, you did it correctly. If you can't access it, that's where when before I said email it, you would try to troubleshoot it. Either email them and let them know I can't access it, or try to file it again. But if you are able to access it, you did it correctly, and it was just an internal error due to maintenance, because like I mentioned, we've been through it. It has happened before. But if you can access it, you're fine.
I'm sure, I'm sure. And thank you so much, Isa, for taking that up. Let's go on to our next question. And this is saying, "Hi, has anyone on STEM OPT tried to renew their F1 in the last few months or recently? Please share."
So STEM OPT is having some issues, and it's not just STEM OPT, it's OPT in general. Technically, you should be able to renew your F1 because it's still available, but the government, how before we were discussing work study and whether there has been any announcement or any issues with work study. And the truth is there have not been any issues with work study, and I encourage people who need to work study to go to their schools and request it. OPT, though, which is different, is when we're done with our school and we want to take some time to actually practice what we studied. OPT has been under the administration's watchful eye, and it might be on the shopping block. We don't know yet, but it has been discussed as something that might be eliminated. And because of that, we have seen some, not issues, but delays with the transferring of OPT back to F1 status. I still encourage my clients to apply the same way I encourage the person who formerly asked before about F2 to F1. So if you're an OPT, definitely go to your school and mention that you want to go back to school and you would like to apply for your F1. The school will work with you because you should be allowed to apply and change your status from OPT or to extend your status from OPT, which is an F1, to another F1 visa. But be aware that it may take a little bit longer simply because of the conversations that the Department of State and Homeland Security have been having here in the US about possibly eliminating OPT. But it has not been done yet. It just may take a little bit longer to change from OPT back to F1.
Yes, there is a lot of changes going on, and friends, I think it's always best to consult with an expert, an immigration attorney. Whichever visa process you are dealing with right now, whatever your status may be. So, why not visit this link which is displayed on the screen, and you can get the details for attorney Isadora Velasquez and also the contact details for her as well. So, also do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. Check us out, and let's go on with our next question now. This is from another anonymous participant asking, "Hi everyone, I'm applying for an F1 visa to pursue my master's degree at a public university. All my documents are ready, but honestly, I'm feeling a bit nervous about the interview. I was previously refused a B1, B2 tourist visa, and I'm worried that it might affect my F1 application. If anyone has tips or advice on how to prepare or what to expect during the interview, I would really appreciate it. Thanks so much in advance."
It would be best if you know why your tourist visa was rejected. But the reality is that when our tourist visa is rejected, we don't know. They don't always tell us. But if you know, you may be able to prepare accordingly. If you know that it was an overstay, or maybe because you have family here, or maybe you didn't have enough money in your bank account. Typically, the reasons a visa may be rejected are those. So if you know you don't have enough money in your bank account, you can go ready now to your interview for a student visa, knowing that you need to show you have enough assets, or you need to show that you have enough ties to your original home country, showing that you're not going to stay illegally in the U.S. Understand that those are the main things they're looking for. They want to know that you won't stay in the U.S. illegally, that you will not be working without permission, that you have enough money to support yourself, because the student visa is very limited and that it may not allow you to work. So if you go with those factors in mind, knowing I have enough money to support myself, I have enough ties to my country, my parents are still here, I'm leaving my car, I'm leaving my fully furnished apartment, I'm leaving all my friends and family, and emphasize that during your interview, you maybe have a successful interview, and distinguish that maybe when you had your tourist visa, you were younger, you didn't have that much money, you didn't have a stable job back then. How are you different now than you were back when you had your tourist visa? If you distinguish those two individuals, you may have a better shot during this new interview.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Isadora, for taking that up. And, I see more questions, so I don't want to leave them as well. So let's take this one. I would like to know if other people on F1 visa have traveled outside the US and re entered without any issues. I'm planning to travel to my home country for a month, and I'm unsure if I might face any problems when returning. My country is not in the list of banned or restricted countries.
So it depends. What we notice is some countries have complained on treatment. For example, Colombia has complained that they are treated differently coming back to the US. I recently had to travel for work to London, and didn't see any specific treatment, but it depends. What I have noticed is sudden news, like Nipasa was saying. The travel ban happened rather suddenly. Although we heard some rumors, We were surprised by some of the countries that were included. We were surprised by some of the countries that were not included. We were expecting countries like China to be included, and it was not mentioned. So my point is, you always have to be on the lookout. To answer your question is, if your country is not included in the travel ban, sadly, you still have to be very cautious on what is announced and follow U.S. news. If you have a visa and you're going to have to come back. Now we see that at least we'll have a cushion of a couple of days if there is an announcement of a potential travel ban, so to come back quickly if you have to come back for work. I do worry that things like tourism may be affected when you return, but I haven't seen, besides that, specific countries being targeted or treated differently upon their return. There are some countries that I would encourage people not to visit, even if they have a visa and they're not part of the travel ban. For example, any other countries in the travel ban, even if we have family or we want to visit, I would advise my clients and you guys not to go, at least not for now, until things settle down or we get better guidance as to what the courts may do. And when you're coming in, just follow the news. Sadly, we have to follow the news to make sure that the government's not taking any action on any place we may be returning. Besides that, so far the U.S. is good, but that's for the moment.
Thank you so much, Isadora, for taking that up as well. And I don't want to leave Girish or RK without answers, so let's quickly take them up. Girish, hi, thank you so much for joining us here on YouTube. And he's saying prior 5 months of H4 visa overstays and unauthorized work on H4 EAD. Departed US, if employer apply for new H1 or I1 or L1 visa, sorry, will be approved. Any waiver are there?
So the 5 month overstay is not really that big of a problem because it's typically when you hit the 6 months that the 3 year ban kicks in. The problem is the unauthorized work. The unauthorized work, there's not really that much of a waiver because the waiver typically requires what we call a qualifying relative, which would be somebody in the U.S. that needs you. So that the unauthorized work is the biggest deal here, for particularly for the H1 visa, because the H1 visa it's more of an employee visa, so that may be difficult. The L1 visa might be a little bit easier to get because the L1 is more for the boss of the company, the leader of the company, or the employee who's very specialized. So there's more of a specific need. So if your employer can choose between the H visa and the L visa, I would encourage your employer to pick the L visa. As to the waiver itself, it's like when you break a vase, you don't go to your mom right away and you tell them, oh, I broke this. You wait for your mom to find out, and then you're like, oh, and then you say you're sorry. So I would apply for the L visa. And then when the government tells you, no, you're not going to get it because of whatever reason, then you seek a waiver. That's how I encourage my clients to apply, because applying with a waiver ahead of time is like admitting, oh, I made this mistake. Be aware that the 5 months, like I said, typically wouldn't be an issue, although overstaying is never encouraged. Don't do it. But it wouldn't be an issue. It's more the unauthorized work. You have to be honest in the application, so please don't lie. But wait until they ask for the waiver. And once again, if you can choose, pick the L visa instead of the H visa, because the L visa is more likely to be better suited for you, that you can justify that you need this waiver, because typically waivers require that qualifying relative, which is very difficult to justify under an H visa if you don't have one. So go for the L and good luck. It's going to be tough, honestly.
Thank you so much for taking that up for Girish. Girish, I hope that you've got your answer, and if you have any more, keep commenting. Well, now we have RK. He's saying there's a talk of removing OPT. What is the chance of that happening, Isa?
It depends. I honestly think that it will be up to the schools to be very vocal and emphasize how OPT is needed. I I feel that talk about removing OPT has to do a little bit with the falling out between Trump and Elon Musk, because Elon Musk was very helpful in emphasizing how OPT was needed for students to practice what they have learned, and how we could keep in the US great talent by having OPT. So now I believe it's up to the schools to emphasize how OPT is great for the United States to keep that talent. So I'm hoping that schools, the same way Harvard was very vocal in letting the country know how international students are essential for the U.S. to remain as great as it wants to be, if we follow the narrative saying, by the way, it's not just when they're studying, it's also when they're practicing their trade. If we can follow the narrative, we can keep OPT. I would ask you selfishly if you can help us promote, spread the word. I don't think we realize, we see students and we don't realize that there is a time in which they're working and how essential they become for the economy, for what we do, and then we lose them and we only see when we lose them. So if we can help spread the word of how great they are when we have the students here so that we can keep them, maybe we can keep it. But right now, I am very worried that it could happen because the Secretary Rubio in the Department of State has been pushing for it. And I believe it's partly based on this falling out in relationships that has not been the best at spreading the word. So that's why I'm asking you to help me spread the word that we need international students, not just as students, but also as employees.
For sure, for sure. And, we've always known America to be a land of immigrants where we are all living together, you know, and working together. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens. But a lot is happening, friends. And to keep yourself updated is the key. So do not forget to, subscribe to our channel. And, before we leave, Isadora, I would really ask, what's your guidance to students and families, currently who are stuck in limbo? So should they wait out, or defer, or look at alternative countries?
Well, for students, it depends where you are. For my clients who are stuck in limbo in the U.S. right now physically is not the best place to be stuck in limbo because of the high level of detentions that are happening. For example, when the visas were being revoked and we didn't know what was going to happen, I admit that I was encouraging my clients to go to Canada, to return home. And it's something that I never thought I would be fighting, but I was generally worried about the high level of detentions we were seeing. Also because the detentions were tied with transferring people and they were not humane conditions. So that's where, if you people are in limbo in the US, I encourage them to leave. But if you're in limbo in other countries, I do encourage them to continue considering the US because I do think litigation is the only way we can stop this ongoing changes that are not really fair. For example, the OPT elimination is something that for students who already have their student visas, they were expecting to have that hands-on experience. It's part of the packet of going to school, paying for the tuition, and now the possibility that you may graduate and not be able to work at where you may have been applying, that should be frustrating. So I have encouraged those students to not give up and to consider litigating, and maybe consider fighting it, to not just be complacent, because I know that may be a limbo, but it's a limbo that I think we can fight legally without the fear of persecution or detention, which I think is the biggest concern right now. So it really does depend on the limbo. For my individuals who were part of the travel ban, I basically called everyone in the 12 countries, asked them to come back to the US depending on the visa. If it was a tourist visa, I basically we're now litigating. We filed lawsuits against the government. I keep emphasizing how expensive the government is because the litigation and attorneys are. Because like Ricky asked when to get an attorney involved, when to have a G28 representation. Honestly, from the beginning, because what we've seen now is a perfect storm of people who maybe before during the prior administration filed using notarios, paralegals, maybe with the best intention, but now that things are a little bit more complicated, it's difficult to fight, or maybe because you didn't keep your DS-160. That's why I previously mentioned make sure everything is the same. The government's finding little loopholes to attack you more. So on complicated cases like EB1, like we were discussing before, it's good to have an attorney from the beginning. On simple matters, like personally, I find student visas to be best done by the school directly. Those are cases in which it's best to just simply have your documentation in order and choose to pick your battles and litigate them. That's why I give the example of OPT, in which being in limbo, depending on where you're located, if the limbo is simply not knowing whether you're going to continue or not, or if they're going to give you the visa or not, give you the program or not, it's good to litigate it. So it's good to look where you are, what options you have available, and see if you have that trusty attorney next to you that's willing to take the case to court. Because you could be the example that everyone looks up to if you keep the visa alive for everyone to enjoy. So think about it. I'm here to help.
For sure, Isa. I mean, that was wonderful. What a good thought, and thank you for sharing that with us as well. Folks out there, I'm sure you really resonated with this conversation we had, and you must be taking away good information with you and have learned quite something from this session we had today with attorney Isadora Velasquez. So do not forget to check her out as well. This link is displayed on the screen. You can check out her contact details if you need a one-on-one consultation as well with her. And also, thank you so much, each one of you, for joining us with your questions, for viewing. And if you have shared, thank you so much. And also, please feel free to keep sharing our content with your friends and folks who would benefit most. So, yes, our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. Subscribe now and ring that bell. So, thank you, Isa. It was really wonderful to have you here. I know if we especially talk about student visa, we can go on, but sometimes sticking to what we have thought we'll discuss. And I'm sure, if there'll be more updates, we would love to have you back to discuss further on this as well.
Whenever you want.
Thank
Happy to
you.
be
Thank you
here.
once again. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And yes, if you do have more questions or want to reach out to me as well, I have a phone number. My number is 408 335 6444. That is also my WhatsApp number. So you can just send us your questions, and maybe that way I could also send it to Attorney Isadora. And you can also email me. My email is nipa@staffingme.com. And once again, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. And stay tuned on Immigration Talk Show because we do have a lot more coming in that you don't want to miss out on. It's Nepasa saying bye for now.